hello. Welcome back to Scaling Up, podcast that looks at businesses, scaling your business, growing your business, and all things in that space. My name is Michelle. I own a company called Holla HR. We primarily support businesses with HR and leadership coaching. And
I'm Jared Cairns, from ETS Business Services. I'm a business consultant that helps businesses to grow and to scale.
Yeah, so that's probably why we're here.
Yeah, it's a good reason for being here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just really conscious that I don't bang my head on this shelf. So, what are we going to talk about today, Jared?
So, if you watched the last video that we did, we said the next two would be around performance management and psychological safety. So I think today's going to be performance management.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So, where do we start?
It's a good question, yeah. What is performance management? I think is a good place to start, because it means different things to different people, doesn't it? I think if you're a bit old school, performance management has quite negative connotations. Performance management is about disciplinaries, it's about telling people off when they've done things wrong and managing performance. I'd like to think as we get a little bit more intelligent in business around performance management, it's a bit more positive today. It's about how do you get the best out of everybody. Your business performance revolves around performance management, because you need the people to perform, and each individual within the business needs to know their place and the reasons for their targets, their KPIs, their drivers, and what that means, but also then how you follow it up. Your appraisal process, what does that mean? Is it a tick box exercise, or does it actually mean something? How often are you following it up? Again, is it one of those things that you just do after 6 months where you go, oh God, we've got a HR policy, we've got to do appraisals now, let's fit them in? Or is it something, again, is like a golden thread that runs through the business around performance management? So I guess performance management, it's quite an open statement, isn't it? What is performance management?
Yeah, and even before we came on the podcast today, we sort of had a bit of a debate, didn't we, around how are we framing this, and is it that kind of carrot and stick? So are we saying it's kind of the actually incentive for people to perform, and talking about kind of objectives and goals, and in that appraisal cycle, obviously not just a one-stop shop, but bringing that to life throughout the year? And on the flip side of that, are we talking very structured performance management around someone's capability to perform in a role, which you alluded to there, it might not be a disciplinary process as such, but certainly a process to potentially have the kind of end result of exiting someone from the business because they're not performing. And there's two sides to it, isn't there, I guess? Because we want to always be talking in that positive language and talking about that positive performance. But something you and I touched on before we kind of joined today is that you might have that kind of real positive thing going on about, this is your objectives, this is what we expect, we're going to check in regularly, this is how it links to the wider business objectives. If we've been really clear on all of that from the beginning, then there's kind of no surprises in that sort of darker performance management place, where it then feels very much that stick and maybe more punitive than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right, when you get to that kind of conduct side of performance management, or the negative side of performance management, the capability, conduct side of things, the two things should support each other, as you say. When you get to the stage where, unfortunately, it does happen, you've got to be honest about this. Sometimes people don't perform, and sometimes you do have to go down that route. But it should be almost like the last case, shouldn't it? That you've done everything up until that point. But clearly, you're going to get your serious cases, which kind of sits outside of performance management. Again, we were laughing before, what if someone punches somebody or steals from the business? Well, that's not performance management.
No, that's
very
definitely
much conduct.
Disciplinary,
It's driving that performance side of things, isn't it? And understanding that it does support the whole disciplinary side of things, because sometimes people don't understand what the role is, and then maybe it does take a disciplinary to reinforce those things and drive it through. But again, it's interesting that I was talking to my son. He's quite early in his career at the moment, and he's just got a kind of a leadership-y type role. And he was asking me, so what do you do with somebody when you've told them, and I said that
language,
word, on purpose, when you've told somebody what to do and they're still not doing it. And so I asked him the question, so how do you know they've understood what you've told them to do? He says, because I said, do you understand? And he said, yeah. I said, no, I'll ask you the question again. How do you know they've understood? And we went through that conversation with him, that if the team doesn't understand what they're doing, that's actually could be a reflection of you as a leader, as a manager, or as a coach, because you haven't explained it to them, you haven't checked their understanding, and almost got them to parrot fashion back. Tell me, your language, what you think I've just told you and how you would do that, or sit with them and show them, take them through that coaching journey. So, performance management again revolves around that, doesn't it? How do you deal with individuals within a team, and not one size fits all of you stand, it's almost like classroom. I'll stand in front of you and I will tell you all what to do and expect that you'll just then go and do exactly what's in my head and not in yours. So it's that individuality around performance managers as well.
And so interesting. I love that you used the word coaching a couple of times there, because that is such an important and powerful tool. Because coaching is simply asking open questions to check someone's understanding, to direct them to answers, to help them direct themselves to answers. And I think, there was an old school methodology of do and tell, and we've absolutely moved on from there, which is great, because also there's not always that one size, there's not always the one right way to do things. I guess it depends what type of role your son's in and the organisation he works for, but ultimately, you might say this is the end goal. How you get there and achieve it is up to you, and different people with different skill sets, with different, maybe more creative agendas, and someone who might be quite linear in their approach would do things very differently but still get to the end goal. So again, it's not always that I've told you and this is the outcome, but actually having a powerful coaching conversation around, okay, so tell me about what you're going to do. What's your goal? What options have you got to get there? Will hopefully kind of spark that understanding, and in his new leadership role, he'd be able to really almost ratify that understanding of, they do get what the end goal is. They might be going about it slightly differently, but they're doing it and they're kind of going in the right direction.
Yeah, you're right. And having that honest conversation with people as well, that I can see that you're struggling with a particular aspect of your role, and again, that coaching methodology, or even like counselling methodology, what is it about that particular task that you're finding difficult, and how can we help you overcome that? And then working with that coaching then, and setting realistic KPIs, setting realistic goals that allow them to flourish in the role and allow them to overcome tasks, and also give them the confidence that it's okay to say, actually, no, I don't understand what you're saying. I really don't. What you've just told me then is just gobbledygook. Please explain it to me again, and be confident that that's all right, and you're not going to be looked down on, or again, that old school methodology of, well, I've told you 3 times now, why aren't you doing it? Right, well, now it's time for a disciplinary because you're not doing as I say. And it's where you draw that line, and then just looping back to that, that whole capability conduct type thing. The capability is, again, it's an honest appraisal of somebody, isn't it? And it could be that they're just not right for that role. You can coach them till the cows come home. They're just not right for that particular role, that task. It doesn't mean they're not valuable to the business, maybe somewhere else, but you would know that through performance management and through coaching and through understanding particular people's skill sets and, what they're good at versus what your business needs.
I'm really interested in that. We're kind of talking about that old school way of dealing with things, which is I've told you, and that's kind of very black and white. And again, I think we've evolved as a society to know that people don't work that way. People have elements of neurodiversity. People have different ways of approaching things. People's skill sets, as you quite rightly said, might be complemented more by doing something differently. So it is more of that, actually trying to understand what we're trying to achieve. And I think, the words performance management in an old school way would have sounded very much do and tell and right and wrong, but actually what you touched on there is that kind of appraisal cycle, and how we get people to understand their role in a company. So tell me a bit more about that, and how you work with businesses around like appraisals, and how you go about helping them kind of set that standard for performance management.
It's a good question. I think it's a really important question as well. Is we talk about like the golden thread sometimes, don't we, in business? That you have that golden thread that runs through the business. And for me, from that performance management point of view, it is what is that overall strategy? Let's make sure the business knows where it's going and what it wants to achieve, and that then your appraisal and performance management regime then follows that. So everybody in the business has a role and has a task and has a directive that follows that golden thread. But I think the really important thing in that for me is that everybody understands their part in that golden thread. Is that if you're asking somebody to do a task or you're setting them a KPI or a target, is that they understand the why behind that target. It's not just, right, well, we need you to, I don't know, do 500 bits of work for the next week. Is helping them to understand, well, why is that important if you only did 400 bits of work? Why are we asking you to do 500? Where does it fit in with the overall strategy? The most successful businesses that I've worked in and worked with are the ones where everybody understands the strategy of the business because they've been part of it. They've been brought into strategy meetings and everybody's had a part to play. It's not just been, right, the business is going in this direction and you are following. There's an element of that, obviously, because people are there for a reason, but they're part of the decision-making process. They've contributed to it, they believe in it. And because they believe in it, they'll be more accepting of performance management, be more accepting of the appraisals and the KPIs because they understand the
how
reason
it
why.
links back.
Of course. Sales targets is a great example. Obviously my background's a lot in sales, and I've worked in businesses where, last year we did, let's just make this maths easy, £1 million. Well, this year we want you to do 1.5 million. You think, where's that target come from? Because we used to do a lot of work to work out targets ourselves, the sales manager, sales director, to say, the business and the market sustains this level of increase. But where it's come from, when you dig around, is actually it's just somebody up above going, no, that's not enough. I want 1.5 million, or the wider business needs 1.5 million. But there's no why, and so people then get disenfranchised with the targets because they think, well, it's impossible, it's not achievable, or we've not been asked our opinion of how this target should be made up, and so you're on the back foot then because people resent the target and they leave. And then you have to get new people in, and all of a sudden that 1.5 million costs money as well. Is even further away then. So enabling people to be part of a decision and understanding the whole business strategy and their part in that strategy, I think is vitally important if you want people to buy into it.
It's so interesting you use that example, because I've worked with a couple of clients in recent years who, when I've sat and talked about appraisals and this whole connect the dots to the wider corporate appraisal, corporate objectives, what the business is trying to achieve, clients often say, well, we want 10 million turnover. I'm like, okay, what does that mean for Joe Bloggs sat in the, I don't know, finance department? Kind of explain what that means. So if you're trying to achieve 10 million, how much do jobs cost? How much does that person understand that if you're going out quoting for this particular work, it has to bring in X amount, minus everyone's salaries or minus, other overheads. How do they connect the dots when they're sat in a department, very kind of isolated, just focusing on one piece? And I think that's the thing that surprises me, certainly probably with smaller businesses, where they'll say, well, we're just aiming for that turnover, but with no context to that and no, like you say, that strategy around actually, but why are we trying to achieve that particular turnover? Not because someone's just put that number out of thin air. Surely we've done some modelling on, well, this is where we've been, this is where we think we can get to, this is what, inflation looks like, this is why we want to achieve that number, because we want to reinvest it back into X, or, and then people get it and they get their part in that, and they can understand it a bit more and say, right, well, I understand how much jobs cost, or I understand how much a particular service is to deliver. So I know if that, we're achieving X number of services, then we need to do so many for that to be kind of achievable. And then that's my part in that, because I'm a salesperson out there, or I'm the finance person looking at every penny, or I'm sat in a support function like IT, but I know we can't invest in that software, so I need to find a software slightly cheaper. Or I sit in the HR team, and in the HR team I know that we spent X amount on recruitment last year, so now we need to focus on retention because we can't let people leave because it costs us money. And it's all of those different departments joining the dots to go, it's not just we've got a target of 10 million, it's how it's kind of broken down, and then people connect to it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with all of that. It's how, again, it's that everybody's part in the overall strategy, isn't it? That, if you want to increase your turnover and you ultimately your margin and your profit, and that's where, we talked about scale, didn't we, versus growth, and that, that kind of conversation is, if you want to increase that area, then what does your production team look like? Does that need to produce more widgets or more software or whatever? And have they got the capability to do that? What about your marketing team? Can then they market it to support the salespeople? What about your finance people? Can they do the work around it? And so there's a knock-on effect to everything. And I think that, again, where it's really important then is to take the view of the people who are working in those departments and explain to them that, okay, we do need to move from point A to point B, whether that's a revenue target, a margin target, a position in the market target, or new customer acquisition, whatever that needs to be. Is, we need to be here because how do we get there? For you to be successful, what do you need, or what do you need from someone else in the business that's going to help you to succeed? Again, you mentioned there, do we need new systems? Do the systems we've got just not support what we're doing? Do we need AI to help us with tasks, mundane tasks that can just be churned over quicker and information gathered quicker that allows the salespeople to be more efficient or the finance people to be more efficient, which means, again, we can scale quicker because we're using intelligence and we're using efficiency rather than, we'll just bring 10 new people in to do that task, So, I think, I go back to the point I made that I think whatever the overall strategy is, everybody's part in that is so important that they understand it and it's not just dictated. I think that's the point, is if it's dictated to people, there will be resistance and there will be conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've probably both seen it in larger businesses. You might have the kind of overall corporate kind of objectives and then departmental objectives. But it might still only be those leaders in those departments that have had a say in what that looks like. So I think you're absolutely right. How do they translate that? Or how do they bring the team on that journey to say, this is the overall business, kind of strategy, and that transparency is really important. And actually for our department, this is what it means. And then it is getting into that kind of appraisal cycle almost that doesn't have to feel really formal. And again, I think, appraisals are a bit of a kind of contentious one in the world of HR. It's we shouldn't be doing them this annual thing and then it stops. And I agree with that. It should be part of that conversation. But on the flip of that, I think if we do away with the traditional appraisal, what we're not doing is having a line in the sand where we set really clear, smart objectives and people know what they're working towards, hence everything we've just said. People don't understand that, don't understand the part they play, the role they do, the specific, how we measure it, whether or not it's achievable, is it relevant, is it time bound, then they're just not going to kind of line up with that. So I don't think it has to be this, we spoke about it once a year and we never touch it again. That is absolutely the wrong thing.
And then you measure it and go, you failed.
Exactly. But I think there needs to be that ongoing dialogue, 100%. But I think if we fail to set clear expectations, we can't be surprised come 12 months time when people haven't met them.
Completely. And again, it fits in with that. We talk a lot, don't we, about people, processes, systems, and data. Your people are, we've talked about a lot. Your process is your performance management process. Where you're recording that information, your systems, what systems are helping you, what's the data showing you around the measurement, and that goes back into the people, as you say, that it's not just, right, here's your appraisal, we've got to do your appraisal this month. It's been 11 months since we last talked about, what objectives did we set 11 months ago? You haven't achieved that one, have you? Sorry, you're not getting your bonus. It's got to be a continuous cycle and it's got to become something that people become comfortable with. And again, for me, where it becomes successful is there's two elements to it. There's the business, obviously, here's the KPIs, objectives, numbers, targets. But what about you? Where do you fit in with the appraiser? What is it? What do you need to achieve? What training can we give you? What are your career goals and aspirations? And how can we as a business support that? Because successful businesses retain people and they bring people along for the journey. And they help to develop people. And sometimes I found there's a fear sometimes of you're just too good at your job. We can't afford for you to move into your ambition, which is project management or software engineer when you're the best salesperson. So we're just going to keep you where you are. We're not going to help develop you. But then people will leave again. People come disenfranchised and leave. So I think, that assessment and an appraisal performance management element is important, that it does focus on the people and what they want to achieve. As a business, you've got to be bold to say, okay, well, that potentially might damage us in that role, but my God, would that person be really valuable to us here? So let's help them. Let's bridge that gap and develop them into that, whilst we're back planning. Because again, performance management, there's a process, there's a plan behind that that's about succession planning. So what happens when that person does move into that role? Or how are we helping that person's performance get to such a level that we need another one of those? Or we know they're going to become a director or a sales manager or whatever it is, and we need to start thinking now about what that looks like.
Yeah, and succession planning is so important for this, isn't it? Because it's not just, okay, did you hit that SMART objective? We ticked a box, same again next year. Yeah, you know, we'll kind of set a very similar objective and it's very transactional. It's actually, how do we support the activity that needs to happen now, and also think about moving people around the business where the talent is there and where it's their particular kind of ambition to move to something different. Because the reality is, it costs money to recruit people.
Yeah.
You know, not just, you know, your kind of very tangible traditional recruitment agency fees or whatever, you know, methodology you've used, but actually the investment of onboarding, training, you know, all the kind of process of bringing someone into your business, setting them up on all your systems, setting them up on payroll, issuing all the paperwork, putting them through all that kind of very kind of mandatory training or e-learning, and then, you know, training them on the job, which is less tangible but will likely take several weeks for them to get up to speed, if not months. You don't want to lose all that knowledge and all that investment of time and money in someone who actually could do a really good job for you somewhere else, but then if you don't have the right conversation, then the potential is to do that. So I think it's part of this kind of performance management cycle that we talk about is absolutely, as you've said, there's an element of this is the job and this is how we're going to get there. But also, what do you want as an individual? And how do we help you achieve that as well? And I think one of the things I always say to clients is, you know, when we set these objectives at the beginning of the year, it's not something to just put in a drawer and pull out in 12 months' time. It should be almost a everyday conversation, or, you know, if you're having one-to-ones with people every couple of weeks, how are you getting on with your objectives? Is there anything we need to look at? Do we need to revisit it? Is it all still relevant?
Do you need any help?
Like, this is the direction of travel for the business. That's still on track. So these still feel relevant, but actually, no, we might have changed direction. That one's no longer relevant. So, you know, we can adjust that. It shouldn't be a you pass or fail at the end of the year. It should be very much, you know, alongside that. Also, what do you need as an individual? And, you know, your one-to-one should have an element of that pastoral care and support, and also actually tangibly, how are you working towards, you know, kind of doing the job that you're paying to do day to day, which should be, you know, a mix on your objectives of day-to-day stuff and probably project work that's moving you towards something a bit bigger than just that, like I say, very transactional, like you've developed 30 widgets this month and same again next month, and there's no kind of real challenge, because people like to be challenged as well. So actually setting those objectives shouldn't just be the business has told us these are the objectives, like you said earlier, you know, they've come from the top. Yes, there'll be an element of that, but I think if people are able to kind of have an input into that and say, well, also I think this would be a really good way to get us there, and I would take an objective around X, you know, then that actually will help drive the business towards that.
Yeah, you're right. And again, that's where people's contribution to the strategy comes in, does it? Into the processes that, you know, you could say to, again, let's use a salesperson is always a good example. You know, how can we help you to achieve more? How can you do more? And it could be, well, at the moment I've got this process where it's taking me 14 clicks to process an order. If I could do that in 3 clicks and process an order quicker, I could make 10 more phone calls. Okay, so as a business, we need to invest in something. We need to change that process to make people more efficient. And again, that's part of that appraisal is, how can we need to grow as a business. We need to move forward. How can we help you to do that? What do you need? And you know, and again, sometimes we've got to be honest, and people sometimes don't perform. But I think, again, part of the success of a successful performance management regime is that it mitigates a lot of things, doesn't it? It mitigates surprises. We don't want surprises. No. If we know that someone is performing really well and they're probably going to be promoted or move into a different role, we know it's coming because we're monitoring and measuring, as you said, you know, we're one-to-ones on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, even if it's informal things. We know it's coming, we can mitigate it, we can work towards it. From the other side, we know if someone's not performing, we're measuring that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and we can see that performance isn't improving despite our best efforts to help. And so there's no surprises when that mitigation comes of, unfortunately, we're going to have to move these people on. We should already be thinking of, okay, what does that mean, and how do we backfill, or do we backfill? Is it that role just isn't actually necessary? And it's not successful because it's not needed, or can we change it? So it gives you options, doesn't it? But I think performance management allows the business to mitigate any surprises. The worst thing in the world is someone handing the notice in and you don't know it's coming.
Yeah, but I think that no surprises is key, because for me an appraisal isn't just this tick box once a year where someone thinks, oh, I did well at my appraisal or I didn't. There should be regular conversations throughout the year. So you're absolutely right. We should be picking up on that underperformance throughout the year. And that's why I say you're almost doing that pastoral piece around how are things, what's going on for you, how can we support, but also how are you doing with your objectives? Where are we? Are we tracking? Is it still the right objective? All that kind of stuff. So there shouldn't be a surprise. So if someone's not performing, that's your opportunity to start to say, what support do we put in place? And thinking in that very clear performance management policy and process, you would have a very clear way of managing someone and holding them to account and going back to basics and retraining and putting every bit of support in place. So if we get to the point where we're inviting them to a formal capability hearing about their performance, that's not a surprise because we've done it all. Excuse me. The other thing that I think is sort of really important that you said there is that, if that role isn't right for the business, then that might become apparent, but that doesn't mean that that's that individual's fault. So we'd maybe follow a slightly different process because, that's not about their performance and capability. But I think when the type of performance management we're talking about is very much that, we're talking about having a very clear objective, a very clear mission, and everyone working towards that. And how we get everyone almost in that cycle of doing that regularly, working towards a particular goal regularly, having those regular conversations, understanding how their part of the world impacts that bigger picture. And then having a very clear process where it becomes apparent that actually from a capability perspective, someone just isn't able to perform in that role and what that might mean for them.
I think that's important. Yes, in my old kind of role, as a sales manager, sales director, that those links with like HR and people like yourself is really important. That those two roles aren't in opposition as well. And again, probably a little bit more old school. That there always was. Certainly my early days of the sales manager role. HR was almost the enemy. They were the police. It was like, you don't want to be talking to HR unless you really need to, because they're the police. It's working together, isn't it? How can we make this whole process better for everyone, for the business? Because again, the last thing is, the world you want to do is go, right, this person isn't performing. I think I need to move into, a disciplinary. You go to HR and say, can you support me with this? And your first question is, well, what's the evidence? Show me why this person isn't. What have you done to help them? And you go, oh, nothing. They've just not hit the target. And it just creates a whole load of noise and angst that doesn't need to happen. Whereas if we're working together, right from the outset, again, that whole business strategy, what does that mean to each department? How can each department support each other? It mitigates any conflict again, doesn't it? It breaks down those silos of we're all in this together, and actually you're telling me as a sales manager or as a salesperson that this is what we need to be successful. This is how we need to help people and coach people and how we can give them that help. But if it doesn't work, then we're still working together on, okay, well, how do we mitigate this for the business and make it the best, the best outcome?
And that's what it's about for me. I think, I've worked in HR a long time, as we talked about. For me, there are processes to follow, but it should never feel like it's a process, because actually, if I was working with yourself as a sales manager, we would sit down and write very clear objectives that align to that business strategy. Everyone's really clear. How do we train them? How do we get them there? What's the kind of support that sits beneath that? And at the point at which someone's maybe not hitting that, we have a more detailed conversation with them on an individual basis. How do we get them there? And then if there's no hope for us kind of turning that performance around, then there's a process. But that process doesn't feel process heavy. It feels like a further element of support. That might unfortunately mean the outcome is the outcome, and the outcome might be they're no longer with the business. But we do that in a way that's really clear, that's really transparent. It's about that open communication, making sure that there's no surprises, and that actually we kind of follow something that feels very fair for everyone, but ultimately gets the right outcome for everyone, including the business. But it might be that person, isn't in the right role, and there are no other options, and they do exit the business, and we do that in the most kind of dignified way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I think we're probably coming towards the end, aren't we? How would you then sum up performance management? I know we opened the question, didn't we, to start off with, what is performance management? But given what we talked about, how or can you sum up what you think performance management is?
Yeah, there are kind of those, I guess, two distinct things. I started by saying carrot and stick, and it's almost a, most of it is in this carrot world, because there feels like actually we're very clear on what the business is trying to achieve. We're very clear with each department, each leader, this is how your team plays a part, and then the team understands that from that leadership perspective. I think then as long as everyone has got very clear objectives, they understand which part they play, where their role fits in, what they're working towards, and there are regular check-ins, you'd hope everything kind of ticks along nicely.
Yeah.
I think by doing all of that as well and setting that up for success, if we ever get to this point of stick and we are saying to someone, this is everything we've done, this is how we've supported, but we just think there's a gap between where you are and where we need you to be, then we're doing that on an individual basis. Yeah. So how do we support and how do we get you there? And that might, unfortunately, not go in the favour of that individual, because we've done everything we can, and like we say, it's not the right role for them, they don't get it, it's just not a good fit for them. But we've gone through a very clear process with them. And something I should say about that as well is that's almost a mini version in people's probationary period.
Mm-hmm.
So probationary periods, I say this to clients a lot, this is your opportunity. It's cost us an awful lot of money to recruit this person.
Yeah.
We've paid agency fees. You and me as the line manager have sat in interviews for 2 days. We've sifted through CVs, we've onboarded them, we've got them all on our systems, we've sent out contracts, we've done all the mandatory e-learning, we've put them through all our in-house training. That is an awful lot of investment of time, energy, money. So actually, we now need to set them something very clear for this next 3-6 month period, whatever that looks like, so that we're not wasting all that money. Because if you tell me in 2 months' time that person isn't performing, and we haven't been clear with them about what's expected, then it's on you as the line manager, like you said to your son, that might be on you as the line manager, because that cost us a lot of money. So actually we need them to be performing.
Setting them up for success right from the beginning into the year, right from that first day they walk in the office, he's helping them, helping the business be set up for success. That was a good summary. It was a bit
of a waffly summary, but yeah.
We'll take it.
But it's and you alluded to a couple of things in there about kind of that transparency and being open. I think that kind of nicely segues into our next one. So we're looking at psychological safety next time. So that's something that you're interested in. Tune in for that one.
Two things definitely go hand in hand.
They do indeed. Right. Everything for performance management today.
Yes, all done. Yeah.
Fab.
Good performance.
Thank you very much. Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks.